Hey folks, thanks very much for joining today on this very hot day in Dublin. Give everyone a couple of minutes just to get set up and situated. I can see a good few people still joining. It's probably one of our most registered for webinars in a good while, so if not ever. So a lot of appetite in this topic, and really appreciate giving us some time out of your day. We'll try to make it as beneficial as possible, and a ton of resources that everyone can kind of take away with them. As I said, just give it another couple of seconds to get everyone in and situated. While we're waiting, please drop a note in the chat where you're calling in from. We're lucky enough now to have customers kind of spread across a ton of different regions, so would love to see. I can only imagine, Patrick, if Dublin has anything to go by. Just while we kind of kick off, just a quick introduction for anyone I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before. Carl O'Brien is my name. I'm one of the two co-founders of StoreHero, alongside Thomas Gleason. Ran a digital marketing agency for a number of years and saw the challenge, I suppose, with trying to run an e-commerce business just through the lens of profitability. Just through the lens of sales, I should say. Unfortunately, we don't traditionally hadn't got that visibility on profitability. In between product costs and packing and shipping, all these different variables really hinder our ability to make profit-driven decisions when our visibility of that profit often comes a couple of weeks later. Really interesting chat there. We've quite the spread globally, which is fantastic to see. Yeah, really, really good. Welcome everyone, Suzanne, James, Jack, Roy, Danielle, Garrett, Patrick. Cool, which look, I suppose we'll dive in. Again, I want to be appreciative of everyone's time and keep it as value focused as possible. Just to kind of set the scene a little bit as to what we want to cover over the next 45 minutes or so. So first, set the scene. Where are we in the context of AI and e-commerce? How has that impacted teams over the last, I suppose, number of years, but practically how that's elevated over the last couple of months specifically. Next, we're going to start to help you break down your business into the specific jobs to be done. What's practically taking your time, and how should you think about adding agent workflows or utilizing AI tools as part of your kind of business model, I suppose. From there, we'll dive into some actual skills, actual workflows, and show you some pretty incredible results we've been able to see and outputs we've been able to generate from using the StoreHero connector. We'll actually walk through those specific skills with a live walkthrough, and then give everyone not only some resources, we'll give you a pack of those skills to take away with you, but then from there, give you some practical direction as to where you should go next. One piece I'd love to kind of get some context from everyone in the chat, and as much interaction as possible is always appreciated. Where is everyone in terms of their AI tools? Is it Claude? Is it ChatGPT? Is it Microsoft Copilot? Is it a maybe more obscure platform? Please drop a note in the chat. I'd love to know how that's split out. I don't want to lead the witness, but I have a funny feeling how it'll probably evolve. But please drop that in the chat. Give everyone a minute. Really interesting. So across the board there, we're seeing consistent Claude and a couple of people jumping between Claude and ChatGPT, which is really interesting. It's some testament to the value of the tool. Just again, I don't want to spend too much time on the basics, but practically for anyone who hasn't, well, to be honest, you've already, a lot of nearly everyone in the chat, it looks like, has already started to experience that. I'm sure there's going to be people with different ranges of, I suppose, utilization, using different connectors, kind of getting into the habit, if anything, of asking Claude to help solve the problems within your business to whatever extent possible. So yeah, really interesting. I suppose from there, just to kind of bring us back to today, I suppose, everyone in the room, whether you're a brand, an agency, an e-com manager, or founder, is balancing a ton of different jobs. That's not necessarily becoming, that list of jobs isn't necessarily becoming any shorter. over the last couple of years, increased pressure from ads channels has meant there's a greater and greater focus we need to put on to make our paid acquisition work for us, make email work for us, facing tougher competition, tighter margins. This all means and translates oftentimes to more work on our plate. To be frank, I suppose, like one of the big things we wanted to do with StoreHero is give businesses true visibility, warts and all, as to what's actually happening in their business. Now, ultimately, that dashboard view is really helpful. It gives you that clarity, but naturally, there's a part often missing because it's another thing to do, add on the to-do list, check your StoreHero, see how you're performing. It still is a task to be done. It takes longer to spot margin leaks with that in mind as your to-do list grows. And ultimately, everyone will have a slightly different cadence internally, but oftentimes things tend to aggregate around some form of weekly marketing meeting, which is used as a bit of a kind of a catch-all to catch any of these tasks, try to keep people accountable and keep the cogs moving. As I mentioned, dashboards tell you what happened, but we in such a unique time and inflection point where that data is only as beneficial as your ability to translate it into clear insights and then actions as to what to do next. We've done a ton of training and enablement, giving people context on the profit first metrics available in StoreHero, but Claude has completely democratized that. There's no longer an education or a skills gap in order to translate that data into those insights and into those actions. And that's going to be the stuff that everyone wants. Not only is it a case where you have to practically do that as it's another element on the to-do list, but it can run on a schedule, work proactively for you, send those recommendations to a place and kind of format and form factor that you want. Putting yourself in a position there where you are immediately notified about stuff that is causing an issue in your store. And also you can follow your curiosity. You can answer those specific questions, those burning questions, difficult questions that you're trying to work through as part of your business. And what's so crazy for us at the moment, to be honest, is we actually don't, every day we're being pleasantly surprised about how powerful the Claude connector is, because ultimately with that data and an LLM like Claude on top, it can be insanely powerful. And again, we'll dive into the specifics. One analogy I've used before as to kind of maybe to illustrate the complexity of e-commerce and direct-to-consumer e-commerce is, imagine this kind of race, and we have 9 hurdles in front of us, and each hurdle is kind of another step in the purchase funnel that you need to get a customer over to make as far as that finish line, and that might be a finish line of a single purchase or a finish line of being a consistent customer that makes referrals. You can see here whether it's the ad impression, then they go to a landing page, a product page, and add to cart. All of these are different variables that a customer can make it over or actually get stuck on. And a lot of these translate back to specific jobs to be done within your business. You're constantly trying to assess, whether you see it in this visual or not, what are all these steps in the process, and potentially what are people actually slipping up, where are we slipping up? Every business will have the hurdles that really, I suppose, kind of really, you have a really compelling setup up for, you're set up well, and others that you struggle with. But think of all this kind of mental load that you have to deal with to try to understand where in that purchase journey people are falling down, not only to drive a sale, but to drive a consistent sale, referral, let alone actually generate you profit as a business. And those aren't the two same things. And ultimately that's kind of, a higher hurdle, maybe a higher bar to get over. Really interesting thought exercise I try to kind of do with brands. If you had the budget of the best e-commerce team in the world, what would you do? What would you hire for? What would people be doing? That's the reference point for what you can do with some of these tools at the moment. Well, you take each of those jobs to be done and you translate that into a kind of an automation or a skill. So for context, for anyone not familiar, think about a Claude skill as like an SOP. You might have developed traditionally SOPs for your business, or with best of intentions aim to create detailed SOPs for your business around all the individual incremental factors, like, okay, here's how we think about reviewing the landing page, here's how we review our ads, here's how we run our Monday morning marketing meeting. Here's the tools we use to review our competitors. We use Facebook Ads Library, all these different things. With that in mind, all of those are specific jobs to be done that can translate into, instead of an SOP, a skill, which is ultimately like a Claude's version of an SOP, a structured list of instructions that it can follow a repeatable process on a consistent basis. And think about those jobs to be done as skills. Keep that association in your mind, because that's really a really powerful unlock, I suppose, overall. From our perspective, we see StoreHero as the brain behind those skills. In order to be able to run those processes effectively, you have to have the information to actually make those decisions. Oftentimes what we see is a ton of e-commerce businesses' implementation of AI tends to be individual team members dropping in screenshots of like partial information into a ChatGPT. The challenge with that is it doesn't understand your business, it doesn't understand your goals, and I suppose more worrying of all, it doesn't understand your margins. And the decisions one business makes over another that has a completely different margin structure are going to be very different. And you can easily end up causing maybe some of the same challenges that attribution tools would have caused over the last couple of years, where every channel is taking credit for sales. Just wait for those channels to try to be giving that advice into your LLM, and to be ultimately even kind of skewing those results even a bit further, because it's buried under insights you might not actually be aware of. With StoreHero, the intention there is that will now operates as like a profit layer. Connects all your data, your sales data, marketing data, profit data, your targets, pulls that into the StoreHero dashboard and kind of data warehouse. And from there, what's most important is there's a ton of different surface areas as to how you interact with that information. Previously, it was just a dashboard whereby you can see your metrics, view by tables, charts, whatever you want. But now this can be tailored to the process that you actually want to develop within your business. You want to see a daily update on Slack. You might want to get an email digest. You might want to ask questions directly in Claude. You may want to translate these into tasks within your task management app. The sky's the limit as to how effective the delivery mechanisms can be. So we have our skills, we have our delivery mechanisms. How do we start to stitch that together? So where we look at this, and this is really getting into the tactical elements, there's three kind of types or kind of groupings or buckets of skills that we would really recommend each e-commerce business and agency that they work with to try to actually build out for themselves. So number one is the discovery skills. So doing audits, understanding your current processes. Don't try to, you would never take another business's SOP and put it into your own business. You need to understand what you want out of your cadence, what goals you care about, and how do you actually tweak those kind of SOPs to serve yourself. Just a question from Ella there. Yes, definitely. So straight after the webinar, you're going to get a playback of all this information. I'll also drop in the slides at the end, as well as all the individual skills. So you'll be have everything ready to go there. From there, as well as the discovery step, we'll have the strategy step. So these are kind of really beneficial skills that offer like an overarching, really comprehensive view of your business. Now that could be, for a business overall, it could be a deeper dive on a channel, but really comprehensive information. It's kind of a longer form document. It might be a presentation. It's the kind of deeper analysis that you're not going to want to do every single morning, but you're going to want to do at some level of frequency to keep yourself honest that we're actually tracking collectively on the right track. And with that in mind, and not too myopic or, we don't have the blinkers on around the incremental daily decisions and miss that bigger picture. From there, we have that strategy. Now we need to integrate skills and automations and workflows to run our business effectively. If we think about any of kind of the traditional kind of business kind of operating systems like Entrepreneur, EOS is one, whereby it kind of gives you a bit of a structured cadence on how you run meetings, how you kind of run your business. Most of them, most business planning would start with a mission and a vision, overarching goals, and breaking that down into kind of quarterly goals, monthly goals, tactics, and actions that you do on a daily basis. The operational piece is actually giving you an agenda for your daily or weekly meetings, telling you exactly what's working, what's not working, and what are the adjustments you need to make. You're not going to reinvent your business model in those, but you're more so staying on track. And that's going to be a really important use case as we go through. Before we actually dive into the next stage, I just want to drop in some instructions for anyone who wants to actually play around with this. So ultimately, most people on the call, I will presume, have started to play around with the StoreHero connector within Claude. If you haven't, I want to drop in 2 links to actually get set up. So you're going to want to take the time to do this properly, but ultimately I can drop it in just so it's kind of easy access. So maybe copy and paste it into a document or something on the side. Again, as we said, I will will make sure I pass this on after the session as well. So what you'll find, I've just dropped in 2 links into the chat there. What they cover is how to connect StoreHero to Claude as an individual user. So if you have a personal account, most people might start there, to be honest. Second step is, or second option, I should say, is connecting Claude to StoreHero to Claude as an admin. So if you have a Claude team account, you are able to kind of manage the connectors that your team can access on an individual basis. You can kind of give your full team access to StoreHero. They still will have to sign into their account, and they have to be an admin within their StoreHero account, but the connector is available to them. So feel free to kind of get that connected up, install that, and then you can use that as a reference point to actually start to kind of power all these skills. So as we said, that's going to give you your profit brain within the StoreHero dashboard, which is really important. Again, no pressure to do it straight away, but it's there as a reference point. One thing that I suppose, as I mentioned, I want to keep this as tactical as possible, and we have a couple of really ready to go skills that are going to serve 80%, if not 95% of people with some tweaks and adjustments. One thing that I think has been extremely beneficial for brands that we've tested this with is an initial discovery exercise where you can actually, there's no point us trying to ourselves create this perfect idea of our workflows and then go to Claude to figure out how to integrate them into our business. There's an opportunity here where we can use these tools to actually build out these processes. One of the first resources that you'll get within the skills file that I'll pass on after the session is an AI COO, a Chief Operating Officer. And the intention of what this will do is actually not take anything I say for granted. You can connect any of the connectors that you have available within you use. So for example, you might have a Gmail connector, you might have a Google Drive connector, a Google Calendar connector, a Slack connector. And what this skill will do is instruct Claude to analyze all of those different communication channels for your particular business, both internally and externally. And the one I actually forgot to mention there is your meeting notes app. People might use read.ai, you might use Fireflies, there's all these different fixers, another one. That's all transcript and what you would call semantic data. In other words, unstructured kind of qualitative information that can really help guide these decisions. It can, this skill will analyze all those connectors, understand the patterns of communication. What are the specific jobs you do unique to your business on a consistent basis? What takes up people's time? What works and doesn't work for people? It'll cluster that into some repeatable processes. In other words, some of these skills you might want to start to automate. It'll recommend how to actually, kind of build out those skills for you. And then it'll also instruct or guide you to set up those skills on a schedule. As an example, we had a situation there where it was a Google Ads agency only yesterday. They wanted to basically create one thing that they found themselves consistently doing for some of their brands with higher SKU counts. It's constantly assessing product profitability against where Google Ads is spending on products. It would analyze that consistently and give the agency and in turn the brand a specific list of what products are driving profitable or unprofitable sales and group them into here's the ones to cut, here's the ones to maintain, and here's the ones to scale. One example, it could be your weekly reports, that it'll take the exact structure that you use in your weekly reports. Ton of really beneficial opportunities there. So that's definitely one thing I would start with. From there, then I can dive into some of the strategic skills that we actually have started to develop within the StoreHero platform, which has been extremely compelling. So number one, we have our profit scaler. So it's a comprehensive business review to find proper profit opportunities. Traditionally, I think a lot of people, in order to get this extreme level of value, would have had to jump on a call with a power user of StoreHero, whether it's myself or some of the StoreHero team or our power user customers are often some of our agency partners who know the platform inside and out. I can honestly say, even after 2 weeks, these analyses, these reports that Claude is developing is better than the work I would do. And I'm as close to this as anyone. And the practical reason for that is everyone would love to analyze as much data as possible if they had the time. As we go back to that to-do list, is full. There's a couple of specific actions here that are extremely compelling at whatever you want to do. Driving profit scaler, customer personas, doing deep dives on individual channels, doing a CRO audit, understanding your messaging frameworks, doing deeper product analysis, finding margin opportunity to figure out the combination between your shipping and packing and packaging and transaction fees, driving tight margin orders, considering your sector and industry benchmarks that we can see within StoreHero. A ton of really compelling ones there. So next I'm going to dive into a couple of those examples. So next with that in mind, I want to start with the profit scaler. The profit scaler report, as I mentioned, is a really compelling one. One thing that you can imagine, I'll actually just open this up as an example. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear me 1 second. Cool. So you should now see my Claude account. So from here, by clicking on Customize on the left-hand side, again, just a recap for anyone who might not have connected, you'll be able to see a StoreHero connector now. You will have signed into StoreHero, and you can see all the tools that StoreHero can access. With this in mind, the intention here is that there's a ton of different reports. These are the equivalent of having to go page by page within the StoreHero platform. What's really compelling about the profit scaler skill is it's meant to take full advantage of all this information, whether it's your ad performance by channel, by campaign, by ad. It could be looking at things like your KPIs, Google Ads attribution, Google Ads performance by campaign, by product, Klaviyo performance, Meta Ads performance, orders by profit, by country, individual order performance, all these individual pieces. I'm actually just gonna give me 1 second there. I don't know if I'm getting a bit laggy for anyone else, but I can see my video getting a bit laggy there. So I just want to close as much as I can here. Okay, I think I might be back. Sorry, folks, about the delay here. I'm just going to close a couple more things. Okay, cool. I think we're back. Okay, perfect. So just to kind of run through here. So what you'll be able to see, all these individual connectors, all individual reports within the StoreHero platform, and the profit scaler report is ultimately set up to take full advantage of each of those. So just to give you an example here of what this individual skill will do once you install it. In the skill section within the platform, within the Claude platform, again, you can see that SOP or list of instructions built specifically for the individual, I suppose the unique benefits that StoreHero can give you around that profit and target data. It'll break down exactly what you want outputted as a business, how you want the SOP to communicate, the delivery format, the information you wanted to consider. And that's all there ready to go. So again, what you'll find over time is some of these skills, by downloading the skills in the pack that I can send on after the, call, you'll be able to easily click to, as long as you have Claude installed on your desktop, you can easily click to save that to your skills library. And once that's done, you might find that you use the skill, it outputs an answer, but you actually want to customize it. So as compared to like a traditional software platform where we have this audit generator that generates a specific type of report, once that's the case, then practically after that point, it's done. Here, it's self-correcting. You can generate a report or something like that from a skill, and then once that's done, you can easily make tweaks and changes to format it in a way that you want to see it. But again, that's going to be your baseline. So from here, what I'll dive into is actually the profit scaler report itself. So this is a really, really interesting one. So I'm just going to jump back up here to the view. So for context, this is kind of like dummy data, just to give you a sense of how it works. So this is what you will start to see from the profit scaler report. It's taken all that information from the platform and developed a slide deck back that you can actually run through as part of your meetings. It starts with the top line note for this business. So sales are up 21% in the time period requested, but profit is down. And it starts by highlighting the three most important kind of causative effect, causes, I suppose, of that change in a way that you would need hours upon hours to scan through each channel to understand. Number one, it's understood that, okay, meta performance is actually still good, but we're driving sales towards products with a tighter gross margin versus our existing products last month, which are much higher margin. And it gives a specific recommendation as to what to do. With this in mind, we can then kind of move on to the second element here. So our hero product. So StoreHero will understand what products are being bought by customers within their first order. It'll understand how those hero products are actually increasing or decreasing on a per month basis. And then thirdly, what it's identified is the fact that our new customer acquisition cost is shot up in April. Our budget didn't go as far. And then from here, it can give us comprehensive recommendations as to what to do about it. So it gives us our overview. It breaks down exactly where that 54K in contribution margin gap went to. Part of it was, we had volume gain. We actually did gain some more sales, 129K, but we lost the margin there, 114. We spent more on ads, 28K, and then we added other costs like returns and shipping. It tells us the products and collections that are causing these changes. And then it gives us specific breakdowns of all the pieces identified at the top. So this vitamin C product is really an issue whereby these in the basics range customers bought the vitamin C serum, but potentially they're not buying higher value products. And we've also seen a decline in demand. It gives us an acquisition overview. It gives us a meta ads overview. So with this in mind, understands how our meta ads are performing. It organizes our campaigns, which are the campaigns we want to scale and which are the ones that we want to pause and rebuild. Next, it goes through things like our top products. What are the products and levers driving these changes? And most importantly, it ties these back into 5 actions to get profit back where we need it to. So with this in mind, it identifies losing ads that are hurting our contribution margin because they're driving a ROAS under our break-even points based on the understanding of our margin. So again, there's incremental cart campaigns there. That's the name of a campaign in this store. Next is a really interesting one. So what it's done is it's looked at all the orders on the store, identified what products people are naturally co-purchasing together, even though they're not necessarily set up as bundles. With that in mind, what it's done is put together that bundle as an example, and it's also calculated the gross profit we would generate from a customer if they actually purchase that bundle. And also it's chosen products that are likely to drive repeat purchases. So it's really understanding all the variables within our store and helping us build an approach to serve that. Next, it's highlighting an analysis of our gift with purchase. We gave a gift with purchase, which the intention was that it was an incentive to drive sales and margin, but it hasn't driven the margin as expected. It's been a bit of a kind of a loser for us. With that in mind, can we either start to promote that within our ads to get credit for giving away that margin, or alternatively maybe pull it back? There might be ads channels we're not currently supported. Maybe we're not doing Google ads and we need to, and that again might be more common for others. Maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's kind of exploring some other kind of email to the extent that you want. And then finally, it gives some specific recommendations on which campaigns are actually hurting your new customer acquisition cost. So again, a ton of really beneficial outcomes. And again, what's next ties this back. So what you can find here is it's extremely comprehensive. There's a ton of information here that you're not necessarily going to run. I think you're not going to run this every week. It's too much information. You're definitely not going to run it every day. But I think this can ground you in the overarching levers for the business. In this particular case, there's some ads changes to make. There's a product mix issue that's making it much more difficult for ourselves. Just to answer some of those particular questions that are coming in, so a ton of interest in the chat. On the sharing the presentation, yeah, by all means, 100% we'll get this shared over. Ella, it's a really interesting question. I think the agency landscape is going to evolve, and just for anyone's context, Ella asked the question there, where does your agency sit within this mix? Should you be using an agency or actually not? I think it really depends on the quality of the agency. I would say there's going to be two big types. One is an agency that will use these skills to purely automate away their work, but in doing so, it might actually run into issues because they are removing their competitive advantage and not doing anything that a brand can't do themselves. The agencies that I think are going to thrive are the agencies who are able to utilize these tools, but actually able to deliver a more compelling service. Because ultimately they're able to understand profitability, they're focused on targets, all these variables, versus just as table stakes reading what Google is saying and passing it back to the client. That would actually allow agencies to maintain or increase their management cost, and a brand should be fine with that because it's a much more compelling support to them as a business. So in reality, it really comes back to the individual agency, but I definitely would see that disconnect that's going to happen over time. So everyone is going to need to work harder. The brand's going to need to work harder to make sure they're staying relevant versus their competitors when everyone has access to these tools. So we really feel, okay, this unique data is a massive competitive advantage. So my long-winded answer to that question, you got me going there, Ella, but I've actually released a podcast next week where we go into a ton of detail on that. So I'm sure plenty more to discuss on it. Next, I want to dive into another persona, which I think is a skill that has been really compelling for us. One of the bigger challenges that we often see businesses face is that high acquisition cost. They're struggling to acquire enough customers at the cost they should be willing to pay. They understand the value of a customer that generates maybe 50 or 60 euros of gross profit for them. Let's say they're willing to spend 20 or 30 euro on that customer. Meta and Google can only find so many of them. And as the ads landscape has evolved, where you have things like Advantage Plus and Performance Max ads, the account structures are actually getting more consolidated. Meta and Google are in the driver's seat to make decisions on your behalf. And the quality of your message, your copy, your headline, kind of ad copy, you have your ad creatives, both statics and videos, your landing pages and your customer offer are all the massive variables to fit into that kind of evolving system that will increase or decrease the kind of quality of your results. One thing that a lot of people do is they would run, persona workshops. They're trying to figure out who is my ideal customer, but who's the customer, who's my current customer? They're maybe two different questions. I think oftentimes those sessions can be quite long. They're very qualitative. They're hard questions to answer and trying to make it sound too easy. Practically, this skill within the StoreHero connector will analyze your past orders and find traits and behaviors to help understand how people are actually interacting with your store, using the data, all this kind of stuff. So in this example, you can see it's identified 6 different customer personas based on where they're coming from, what they're buying, how they're coming back, all these different pieces. It's analyzed things like first product affinity, what products are acquiring first-time customers, not only getting repeat customers back, which acquisition channels are we driving these sales from, and when we do acquire a customer, what happens over time. So we can actually start to dive into the guts of this here. So number 1 persona represents 32% share of customers on this store is Margot, US treatment lover. So going back to that example, this store sells treatments. and they sell kind of skincare products. This customer is a high value customer, $104 to profit on first order, 10% repeat rate, and a 9% growth in LTV. So this persona builder has told us specifically for this customer, we need to use Klaviyo flows to drive the next best product around the vitamin C serum. It's a logical next step to the treatments, and because they're already sold on that concept. Next, it's understood and analyzed that, oh, it actually looks like a bunch of these orders have gift boxes attached. So it's built a persona around people buying as gifting. It's ultimately identified how profitable are they, what should we spend to acquire them, and what should we do? So around that gifting calendar campaign is really effective. We have another persona that focuses on our core basics products, recommends a Glow routine trio bundle, combining high value repeat driven products and targeting that specific type of customer. Next, we have a premium buyer focused in the UK versus the US. With this in mind, what are the campaigns, the remarketing ads that need to be focused on? And then we have our repeat customer cohorts. We have a 12% share of our customers as high degree of loyalty. And with that in mind, I suppose one we want to watch, and email is going to do the heavy lifting there. So as you can see, incredibly compelling as to what the answers you can get back. Ian, there's a question on this. How can you get this set up? So really easy to do. So back in the chat, you'll see there's connectors for StoreHero and Claude connector. Once Claude is installed on your store, what I'm going to do after the session is actually allow you to, or kind of send you a folder which will allow you to click to install all these skills within your kind of Claude account, I suppose. So it'll be all ready to go just at the end of the session. Next one I want to touch on as a kind of the third example, because I want to leave some time for questions as well, is our profit pulse. So mentioned at the start, you have your kind of strategic reviews, and then you have your more comprehensive reviews, which I think can be really effective for giving that kind of broad view of exactly what's happening on the store. So if I just jump down here, so a ton of different examples as we're kind of playing around with this data. So could I just give an example as to how this looks? So this is a sample store where we've taken out this kind of profit pulse. Imagine if you start your week as a business with a really compelling view of exactly what happened on your store over the last, week, month to date, quarter to date, year to date. We can see headline view, what's working and what's not working. What's the priority actions to fix? What are our individual numbers across each of our channels? Where did we lose and gain contribution margin? Paid acquisition. What are the specific campaigns that are working, need attention, or not working that we need to make change actions on? What are the products driving performance, maybe pulling back? And again, all this time back to a specific list of actions that we want to take on a daily basis. So we have a specific campaign we need to pause. Campaigns we want to hold at the current budget. Campaigns we want to scale, our PMAX non-brand. We have new ad creatives. It's understood which ad creatives are experiencing some fatigue at the moment that we actually want to start to understand and explore. And then from there, things like our product pages. So again, it's understood our not only store performance, ad performance, LTV, GA4 data, which are our product pages that actually have a per bounce rate, putting some time into key SKUs that potentially the landing page isn't as effective as it could be, ultimately could be really effective as well. And then finally, reactivation discount cadence. So we're doing a lot of discounting for reactivating in this particular subscription, kind of dummy subscription business. How worth it is that discount to you? You don't want to be too aggressive, but ultimately you're not, for a repeat customer to re-engage them, you're maybe not reacquiring them by way of an ad. So you want to actually give that as an example. So again, ton of really beneficial kind of skills there, and that really just scratches the surface. So just to jump back into our presentation here, to kind of give examples of each of these. So we have our profit scaler, as I mentioned. We jumped into our customer personas. So mine's our orders, builds behavioral archetypes, surfaces bundles and cross-sell opportunities, and puts together a kind of clear, communicable, if that's a word, slide deck that can easily be shared with the team. We also have a couple of other ones in here that I think are really effective. messaging framework. So what that will do is actually go and do some research on your website, pull product reviews, on-site search queries through GA4 to understand the exact language that customers actually use. Their, what's the win? What's the kind of value gain? What are the things that they love about your product? What are but equally loss avoidance? What are the negative scenarios you've avoided? Depending on the product, of course, that applies to different scenarios and outputs a ton of really valuable context to use as a basis for your ad copy landing page work. Other thing to mention, that's so obviously important when it comes to the personas. All that persona information can be incredibly effective in order to give yourself a clear baseline as to, I suppose, who do I actually want to target? Which customers am I going to focus on? And you can see there the picture of the kind of actions we take can often be very different if we have that layer of profitability that sits on the top. And then finally, we went through things like our weekly profit pulse, daily pulse. We have equivalents of that. And new customer pulse. So if you really want to focus on new customers as a component, go a little bit deeper on that, that's definitely something you can do. Also for agencies, we're going to do probably a similar session that kind of expands on this for agencies. But we also have a skill in there which allows you to roll up all of your clients at the start of each Monday, not only get a daily pulse for one particular brand, but actually get a clear view of which of your clients are on track, need attention, and critical. So I'm sure every brand will be happy to know in the room that your agency is immediately getting surfaced the important information that they need to take action on your behalf. So again, another really beneficial piece and something I'm sure it's the first of many kind of resources we're kind of exploring. Just answer that question, Ian. Great points. So ultimately, yes, we are probably going to, we're still actually figuring this out, to be honest, because one thing we found is there's such, people are struggling with this setup. So definitely if anyone needs additional help on this, please let us know. And we can kind of look at a deeper workshop on a brand by brand or an agency by agency basis. It's potentially something that might be like an additional service, but we find people are very interested in it, considering the time that you would put into it. The cost is negligible compared to the time that's potentially being wasted manually doing some of these reports on a weekly basis. But obviously, if you want to use our resources, you can obviously do that natively within the StoreHero platform. So anyone interested in that, please get in touch, and we'll be happy to kind of understand your business, start to understand what these workflows are, and actually give you a hand to implement it in. And then finally, do we have anything else? Yeah, there we go. So lastly, and by the way, again, I have a couple of minutes here for some questions. So if there's anything I didn't cover there, I'm going to drop in the resources now in a second, because I'm sure that'll be probably the first question. But if there's anything else, please drop it in the chat as I'm just finalizing this one or two last slides. There's a lot of information here. So what I would really recommend is start with a couple of key skills. Number one, what's the discovery exercise? Analyze your current business, your processes to figure out what are the current blockers. And of course, if you have your own opinion on what that is, add it into that skill. Independent from just purely the StoreHero piece, I think it's going to be really compelling to give you a view as to what those blockers look like at a business level. Next, we have the weekly and daily profit pulses. So again, imagine the time that it would naturally take in order to go through each individual channel, understand the relationships day by day, correlations, all these different things. You start the week with that information. And then thirdly, what are those kind of, not only the kind of profit scaler ones, but again, go back through that analysis, back through the discovery to figure out maybe some of those new jobs to be done skills, those deeper analyses that could maybe be a good start. It might be, if Google is really an issue and you're happy enough with the overall picture, there's a deep dive there. If you're looking at Meta, again, there's a deep dive there. If you want to look at that overall profit picture, I think that's often the best place to start for most people, alongside the personas, is the reason why I've structured it as such today. Okay, so a ton there. Finally, I just want to leave time for any last questions. I suppose it would be interesting to know, I'd love a bit of feedback in the chat as to what skill sounds most interesting for people. We're always trying to get some feedback as to where we want to spend more time. The benefit of this is it's so flexible. So I'd love if everyone could drop that in the chat. Anything that particularly stood out over something else here would be really helpful for us to actually start to kind of learn and create some more resources around it. Cool. Okay, perfect. From my side, again, really appreciate all the time everyone's taken. In terms of actual kind of resources and kind of next steps, and what I'll do here, so as I mentioned, within the next couple of minutes, you'll get an email. Once it's kind of generated, you'll get I suppose, a couple of things. You'll get the video playback. What I'll also just drop in the chat here is a couple of other resources. So we have the specific skills we've covered. I'll drop in the AI prompts. So that's in here. There we go. And then what I'll also do is pass on the individual slides as well. So hopefully between those, that gives as I suppose, a clear a reference point as possible. In terms of actually how to get this implemented, the benefit here is all of these features around the MCP and Claude connector is included for no extra cost within your StoreHero account and StoreHero plan, which is again always music to people's ears. But we think this is so fundamental to our business that this is really the product, to a certain extent moving forward. The dashboard there is still going to be an important view for people, but ultimately something that's beneficial. Thanks everyone for the feedback. Just looking through some of these last questions here. So weekly profit pulse there, a ton there, all sound interesting. Profit scaler one is interesting. That's great. Finally, just to Suzanne, profit report. That's great. Great question from yourself, Patrick. So can StoreHero and Claude provide insights for lead gen funnel ads? So ultimately, StoreHero will probably do quite a good job at this, but it's not how it's designed. The piece I would probably keep that in mind, if this is an e-commerce business, you might have a situation there where there's some sort of lead opt-ins, whether it's quotes for something that maybe has an in-person element. If ideally it ties back to the sales element, but like for example, we had a situation there with a flooring company. What they saw is they did request the quotes as naturally people wanted to go in store, and the Claude integration was able to understand the correlation between samples provided and quotes requested on particular kind of sample floor products and versus the products that are actually being sold. So it was really effective to know, okay, these particular samples are being purchased. They're never turning into the samples are being requested. They're not turning into purchases. So potentially the in-person view of them, people don't like the color when they get in there. So again, really specific example, but a worthwhile reference point. Hope that was beneficial. Apologies for the technical glitch in the middle where I probably went a bit kind of frozen, but look, a ton there. Have the resources. You get the playback in the next couple of minutes. And yeah, any final questions, please get in touch. If you're not already a StoreHero customer, we have a 7-day trial. Jump on to StoreHero.ai. I'll drop it in the chat here as well. You can easily sign up, get playing around with this stuff, and kind of start to build these processes into your business. While kind of take advantage of that head start, as a lot of people are, still very much in the midst of trying to figure this out. There we go. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, folks. And look, I'm sure we'll be chatting soon. Thanks.